that's
Sure.
that's one of the advice that I would, if somebody was to ask me what is the one thing. I mean, I work with my brother and I work with my best friend, and we are able to maintain our relationships distinctly despite having an extremely volatile work environment and work
Yeah.
to work conditions. And I think it comes from how you use the levers in your life, and you learn to create those distinctions. And that helps, really.
In today's episode of Questions I Wanted to Ask, I speak to Monisha Advani, the co-founder of MA Entertainment, the production company that has delivered iconic hit films such as D-Day, Airlift, Satyamev Jayate, Bazaar, and most recently Bell Bottom and the web series Empire, amongst many. Monisha and I spoke about her life and transition from leading a very, very successful HR firm to now producing content across different mediums, her take on bringing equality and more institutionalization in the business of entertainment, and still being able to stay grounded in all the chaos and going back to her middle class values. Monisha is a woman who's built many successful businesses, but has her feet to the ground and is now making changes every possible way to bring scale and more success to the entertainment business in India. Welcome to Questions I Wanted to Ask. It's such an honor to have you, Monisha.
Absolute pleasure, Anshu. I mean, like I said to you at the start of this, you made such an indelible impression on me all these years ago, and I've always followed what you're doing from the sidelines. And I'm really pleased to see that you've built this platform. I think it's wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So, you are right now sitting in London, I believe.
That's right.
And what has been the last couple? Because all I see is ek release ke baad ek release, ek release ke baad ek. What has the last couple of months been? Just for people who are hearing you, what has it been in from a producer's perspective and from an MA perspective?
So in a lot of ways, I can turn around and make it sound very romantic and say that, oh, it's been chaotic and it's been under pressure and it's been absolute craziness. But, I believe in thriving in planned chaos. And that's always been a motto and a mission in life. So while there has been pressure, I think what we've been fortunate is that we anticipated and we've had the nimbleness to adapt to changing circumstances, which has helped us really, smoothly ensure that this volume of content that is coming out, it's not accidental, it's planned, and it's something that it's a momentum that and inertia that we've been building, I think, for a decade now, and it's been something that we've been crying out to people and saying the real need for the entertainment businesses is for companies, more and more companies and producers to institutionalize and to at least function as institutions. And we've attempted to do that. And I think, fingers crossed, I mean, the jury's out whether the struggle is worth it. But I think we're on a path that we're pretty pleased about right now.
No, I think I absolutely kind of agree with you. And I think you've been able to do that to quite some measure by bringing that platform. But Monisha, when you mention corporatization or institutionalizing the way content is made or the way films are made, right, today, what do you mean by that for people to understand?
Absolutely. I think any creative art at the end of the day, whether it's painting, whether it's music, whether it's creating cinema, I think there's no divorcing the fact that it's a very elite number of people who are gifted to be able to create these things. But I do believe that there is a need for an infrastructure that facilitates more and more of this, so that the right brain functioning of the human species actually gets more and more recognition. So this is, of course, an 80,000 feet view that I'm giving you. What it means really at the ground level is the fact that the more scale we build as producers, the more stories we're going to be able to tell. There's an audience out there which is looking for inspiration, looking for entertainment, looking for sometimes even a distraction. And I think we need to feel somewhere, because I think fact is becoming so much more interesting than fiction. We have to ensure that fiction doesn't lose its momentum. And I think keeping that volume going is very important. More specifically now, I'll go into why corporatization. And what I mean by that, Madhu and I come from a very simple corporate background, Anshu.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, but you know what happens is that insight of having built companies in the past built a discipline in us.
Sure.
And the discipline was that no matter how many the variables may be in business, it's important for us to ensure there are certain metrics that we measure ourselves by, and we create some level of predictability in the business. So it took us about 4 years we started the business in 2011. And it took us about 4 years to figure out how this industry functions and how it would be possible to do things in a different way. And I think that our experiment is right now paying dividend. And when I say paying dividend, I don't mean just bottom line. I certainly mean it's paying dividend in the content area, and it's giving an opportunity to more and more talent. And I think that is our biggest achievement.
Interesting. Manisha, I remember, I think in 2014-15, when you were just beginning to start work on POW, and I had met you for the first time then, that was not the time when the OTTs had come into picture. In fact, none of them were there, right? Yes, Netflix was a big thing in the US, but it hadn't come. Hotstar wasn't there, or any of this thing. At that time, what you were actually doing was producing for television. Right. POW was made keeping television in mind, and Nikhil and you guys were the first ones to actually embrace it and said, yeah, television, it's cool, right? It was also the time when some of the biggest producers probably wanted to come for the sake of making money, but I don't know whether they got the rhythm right. What were you thinking then? What took you to actually take that jump on television? Because at that point it was seen as saying, oh, TV ke liye kaun produce karega? Only if you give me money, I'll produce it. You actually changed both the notions.
Yeah. So Anshu, I'll tell you a really funny story. In 2010, when Nikhil had started a conversation with me about joining hands to set up this company, and he was telling me very simplistically that these are the films that I've made as a director, and some of them have worked, some of them haven't, and I'm wanting to set up my own production house. But the one thing that I remember remarking to him and telling him at that point, very instinctively and almost arrogantly, I think, which was so wrong, was that I told him, I said, Nikhil, Salaam Hai Ishq was a really nice film. I just think that you should have made it into 7 episodes. And I remember him just looking at me with a click and just looking at me and saying, yeah, that does make sense. I said, yeah, I mean, imagine if you were to release this as a TV special or, do a YouTube special with it. I mean, you'll be minting with it. I mean, there was a very naive and arrogant view from the outside, right? And he reminds me of that always, because he used to get pretty frustrated when every meeting we would go in when we set up a company, and people would say, what's different about you guys? And I would say that, look, we're building content that lasts, and we believe that it's going to move to other platforms. And I remember studio heads, and I won't name them, some very illustrious ones, used to stare at me and say, yeah, but what's the cast like? And they would just want to get straight to, the most obvious points. And I remember Nikhil used to tell me on the side that, listen, I get it that you've got a vision, but if you don't mind, can you just, wait for it to catch up, and we'll talk about it later. I'm sorry I sound immodest, but it's like a trumpet that I wanted to blow a long time and say that, we knew it. So when POW came along, it was really a chance that, and I have to thank the team at Star and in particular Uday Shankar, because they turned around and said that, listen, we're really pleased with the kind of tone that Nikhil has started to make content, especially impressed with D-Day. And they said that, can we get Homeland to India? Right? And Homeland was such a big property. And we said, wow, that's a huge responsibility. And sure enough, 2 years later, we had the show up and running. But I'm sure it was the best experience that we had, let me tell you, because it completely changed the way we were functioning. It taught us to become more production-centric. It taught us how to run multiple units. And I'm not talking about like a second unit, but because we had taken over practically the entire Kamalistan and converted it into a closed set. I think you visited also. And we actually had 3 directors shooting simultaneously. We had 3 dedicated units.
It was there, and the set was there for a very long time, if I remember.
Almost a year. I mean, I remember Purav, who was one of the cast members. He actually had created a little garden patch outside his cubicle, and I looked at him and I remember asking him that, "Do you think something's going to grow?" He said, "Yeah, it's going to grow with the show," and I was so happy because we created that kind of permanence in a very temporary business. Today, POW is running on MX Player, and at the same time that we've got the Empire on Disney Plus Hotstar, and we've got Mumbai Diaries on Prime. It's great that we still get feedback on POW. I mean, the number of people writing to us and say, "Hey, this is a great show. Where was it?" Well, I think it's finding its audience now, and it's never too late, and that's the beauty of content. It's something that's got value and permanence.
Interesting. Madhu, let me just, Monisha, I don't know why I'm calling you Madhu. But Monisha, let me just, kind of take a step back, because a lot of people don't know that you didn't start as film producers. Yes, Nikhil was there, but you and Madhu ran a very, very successful company, which you later sold off, HR company, which you later sold off. I want you to share a little piece of that, because I know the essence of what MA is today has a lot to do with your and Madhu's experience, of building that company and running that company. And I think the discipline that you brought from that company to MA, which kind of changed the way we actually build companies in entertainment in India.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Madhu and I and Nikhil, all three of us actually grew up together. Nikhil and I, of course, shared parents, but Nikhil and Madhu are classmates, and they're both a year younger than me. But we were literally those kids who grew up. I always like to describe us as the right kids who grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, or the right side of the tracks, whichever. The wrong kids who grew up on the right side of the tracks, which basically means that we were fortunate to go to a really good school, but came from extremely middle class values. And those values were, get an education and get a degree, and then go and get a job, and then hopefully get a green card. I mean, that's the generation that I belong to, and that was, those are the ambition pegs that were set for us. Madhu and I, very quickly, I think we were 14 and 15 when we decided that, we've got to do things differently. Interestingly, it wasn't the fact that, we're girls and we're going to try and do something. There wasn't a tone of feminism in it as much as a desire to just be independent.
Ambition.
It was just literally the fact that we said that, honestly, we wanted to drive a car. So we said that, let's figure out how to drive a car. Our fathers aren't going to give us cars because they don't have them. And so we're going to have to buy a car. So how do you buy a car? You're going to have to make money. So it was very simple. The drivers that made us want to, I love to tell people that the ignition for us was some great vision to change the world. It was a very simplistic thing that we used to literally sit down and talk and say, one day let's build a company, and what we'll do is we'll have 20 lakhs in the bank. And we used to get excited with that. It was as naive as that, but we knew that whatever we would do, we'd do it sincerely. I dropped out of university early, and I came back to India. I was studying in the US, and much to the disappointment of my IIT graduated father and JJ School of Arts mom, they were, my mom was very supportive. She sensed that I wanted to do things differently. Father was very traditional, but he came around eventually and became very proud of the first company that Madhu and I set up at that point. Which was actually a student counseling business, which went on to become very successful. And that became the springboard for us to set up an HR company. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I sensed the fact that a student counseling business had this thing called the internet, which was going to very quickly shrink the gap between students and counselors, which we were trying to fulfill. And I said to Madhu, if that's going to happen, we can't go out of business. We need to grow with the business. And so the next thing people want after they've graduated is a job. So we morphed into a recruitment company. And I think it was only after 9 years of being in that business that we stopped and looked behind us and said, oh, damn, we've really built a big company. Because I remember we were at a offsite with all our employees, I think it was somewhere in 2004. And there was a whole bunch of people who were there, and they all looked at some. It must have been at least about 120 of them, and they turned to us and said, "I said to them, I said, do you think we're ready to get acquired?" And they said, "Why should we be acquired? Why can't we go about acquiring a company?" So honestly, my first trigger was to actually look at acquiring a company abroad. And so Madhu and I did some road shows, and we started targeting companies that we wanted to acquire and raise funds in the UK. So I'm talking about year 2004, 2005. And it was very weird because suddenly out of the blue, we had the world's second largest HR company make a call to us and say that, listen, you guys are very interesting. We'd like to come in and have a meeting with you. So we had them over. Randstad came in, and that was a long dating we went through. We were very elusive brides. And long story short, they acquired us in 2005. The transaction ended in 2009. For those 4 years, I served as managing director for India. We acquired 2 other companies in India, integrated those. Eventually, it was a very large organization across 22 locations, and employees in thousands. And it was a very, very exciting journey for us. Honestly, I mean, again, in that same naivety, both of us hit a point where we said, okay, now we should just retire because we're done. You've hit an Everest, point of Everest, and we were quite happily settled in retirement. I was working in non-profit on the board of a few companies, and Madhu was enjoying traveling. When suddenly, out of the blue, Nikhil comes, and my brother and I are, I think, today very close. I have 2 brothers. One is one whose house I'm taking advantage of right now to relax. But Nikhil and I, we're just 11 months apart in age, but we're very different. And I think that's the beauty of the way we've been brought up. And yet we are very respectful and protective of one another, despite the fact that I think for almost 20 years, I was busy in my career and he was busy in his. And so when we converged and he came across, I said to him, it's wonderful because you've never taken me to lunch. And he says, no, it's going to be fun. We'll have this discussion about what you can do in the future. And I found it amusing that he was telling me what I'm going to do in the future. And lo and behold, 10 years on, we've got this lovely company we're very proud of. It was a no-brainer for us to convince Madhu to join us. Nikhil and Madhu, again, being classmates from school. It's so weird because just yesterday somebody sent me a clip of the 2 of them in the 10th standard dancing together, and the song was what is that song? Starship Enterprise. They've got that song which is Nothing's Going to Stop Us Now. And I was just looking at the 2 of them dancing to that, and I said, this is something so prophetic. They'll kill me that I've said this on record, but it deserves to be said that I think it wasn't an easy journey to become firstly partners the way we have, but I think it's helped a lot in the fact that we've grown up together and we share something very important, which is the DNA of values. So that's the story.
Very interesting. I always knew about the HR company, etc., but I didn't know about the scale. This thing, and I mean, rightfully, it kind of explains how and why you built MA, right? There's something very interesting you said, Monisha. You said we were kids who were going to very good schools, but brought up with middle class values. And then you also talked about it wasn't anything about feminism. I want to ask you 2 questions, and you can choose to answer whichever first. Please. What was it growing up with 2 boys? The reason I'm asking you is that you are this strong, independent personality with a very strong sense of business, right? That's what you're known for. And I don't think so. You have too much of a business background in the family, right? How did that come up? What it takes to be brought up in an Indian family where the girl in the family becomes so strong? I would say equal parenting or whatever, right? And second part is, what is this middle class upbringing that you're talking about, because a lot of us in the industry think of all the three of you as South Bombay kids, right? And I want to bust that myth, and that question's coming from a lot of people. So because I do a little research before every time I get guests, and that questions come from a lot of people saying, oh, but these are three South Bombay kids, and how have they been able to kind of build this company and manage it with so much of discipline and all of that? So yeah, I know two very different questions, but please.
But they're great. They're great questions. So I'll start by saying that a lot of who I am, I owe to really four people in my family, which is my parents and my two brothers. But I will, if I was to put it in order of who I would award, number one would be my mother. She's no more, but she was a huge influence in my life. And I always mentally thank her for giving me two brothers to practice on and ensure that I'd find a way to get ahead. But she used to actually, she used to be very sensitive to the fact that while growing up, I grew up in a large family with lots of cousins, and of course, very traditional views of uncles and aunts and grandparents. And while they were progressive about education and a lot of things, but there was always a gender differential that existed. I use the word differential rather than discrimination, because I think discrimination, it's really a perspective.
We move past beyond discrimination, I guess.
It's like I said, I looked at it as a differential, and because that was the attitude my mother brought me up with. And she said, look, they're going to differentiate. And she used to whisper this to me, and she used to say, they're always going to say that your brothers are going to get more, they're going to be better, and you would have to fight a little harder. And it's not about just your brothers, it's going to be men in general. And I used to initially be very aggressively questioning about it. But as I grew older, I realized the level of preparedness, that she had instilled in me just by the upbringing and the kind of equal environment I was brought up in. And it was great for me, but I know that it's made both my brothers into great fathers, because they both have daughters, and you can see her vision translating in them as well. So I think somewhere, in this vast universe, there's a small dot that dropped and helped me realize that while I am a feminist, I certainly believe in women's rights, and I do believe that they require representation and they require limitless advocacy even today, not just in India, but all over the world. I think, Anshu, I owe a lot to my family, the way they brought me up. And I think that made all the difference. Why middle class and why I talk about that is because all three of us respectively saw our fathers and mother, in my case, wake up at 5 a.m. And no matter what it was, whether it was a Saturday or a Sunday, it didn't make a difference, because in those days it was 6-day weeks. Our father would go to work at a factory in Thane. So yes, we lived in South Bombay, but he would walk to the station at Grant Road and catch the train and switch trains in Dadar, and then take a bus from there onwards when he hit Thane to get to his factory. And he did that admirably, just so that we had the comfort of being walking distance from a good school. And somewhere, the growing up, so that's the discipline that comes in us, and which is why MA Entertainment opens office earlier than a lot of other companies in the film business. The second thing was that I grew up sharing a room and bathroom with my brothers till a very long time. So learning how to beat the line and get there in front meant that you get up early and you get going and you fight your way through. So it's as simple as this. What are the formative things that make you the person you are? I think is really what is ingrained in the three of us. South Bombay is really geography as far as we are concerned. It just helps the fact that going on the Sea Link and traveling on it every day to work back and forth is perhaps the biggest perk I have of the business I'm in. It's such a pretty sight. And it helps me completely set myself up when I'm on the way to work, and say that the moment I'm off this link, the gear shifts. Yeah. And likewise, when I'm heading back home, the gear changes to a more relaxed one, and I learn how to keep a differentiation between my lives as well. And that goes for Nikhil and Madhu. All three of us have those levers in place.
Interesting. Tell me, you mentioned about, women. All of us are aware. I mean, it's not just you. I am equally aware of the fact that as women, you have to make that extra, take that extra walk, do that extra, make that extra effort, right? How have you, when you entered the industry? I'm not saying industry has been there has been gender. I mean, it's everywhere, so it's not just one industry that you can pick up. But what, as a woman, as a leader in the industry, what are the things that you have been careful about to be able to bring equality or measures, or I mean, what is it, or what do you think that you'd like to change more?
So, I'm going to answer this in two parts. One is I'm going to just share an incident which is not related to the industry. There's a perception that we have a lot of catching up to do in India when it comes to women's rights. And I want to somewhere challenge that and say that I think the whole world needs to catch up with women's rights. I remember way back more than 15 years ago, I was in a very, very nice meeting with some dignitaries from the Netherlands, and their foreign minister was very pleased to meet me because she knew that my company had been acquired by Randstad, which is one of their most prized companies in the Netherlands. And she said, "Oh, you must be." I remember meeting in New Delhi, and she said, "You must be so proud that a Western company is giving you, as an Indian woman, this recognition." And she meant it very, very complimentarily and very nicely. And I listened to her, and I said, "I actually feel sorry for you." And she was taken aback, and there were all these dignitaries around, and they looked at me like, "What's she saying?" And I said, "Because you see, in my country, I have been brought up in India where, like I said to you, Anshu, my mother brought me up saying, you're going to feel the difference and you're going to have to fight it. So whether it is the fact that a watchman will not stand for you, but he'll stand up for your brothers, even if, you've paid for the car that you come out of, or if, you find that in a boardroom it's going to be tough. It's something that you need to be prepared for. So, it's almost like an invisible cloak that all of us women wear when we leave our sanctum. In India, we're prepared for it, right? We anticipate it, we expect it. Our defenses are.
Yeah.
That's not the case in the West. And I told her, I said, in the West, you have neutralized women to believe that they're not going to be discriminated against, when the fact is discrimination exists in your community. And I feel it when I'm in your boardroom, because you'll have members of boards who are, really senior and experienced. And if they can't understand a woman's point of view, they'll be the first ones to crack a sexist joke. And it's a very, very underhanded way of discriminating, right? And she looked at me completely stunned, and she started clapping, and she said, "Thank you, because what you just said validates what I feel." And I said, well, it's not just about validation, it's about all of us owning up to it.
Yeah.
So I think, it's about the hardwiring of the species, really, because you see gender differentiation really across the animal kingdom, very honestly. So we're all just hardwired in that sense. I think it's got to do with physiological functioning, but I think that as human beings, we've created great parity over the last 2,000 years of our civilization. So we owe it to that civilization, to ensure that we keep pushing the envelope on it and giving equal opportunity. As far as the film industry is concerned, I think that in these 10 years, I've seen things change, I've seen things improve, and then I've seen things not. I've seen a lot of, people choose to literally dust under the carpet and overlook some of the situations. As a company, we are extremely conscientious about how women are perceived and how women are treated in the workplace. But I'll tell you a point of improvement that came to us as well. About just before the pandemic, about 2.5 years ago, Nikhil's daughter happened to drop by the office, and she was at that point 13 years old. And I stood with her at the office, and I said, "Oh, you've come after a long time here. How does it look so big and so nice? And, how do you feel about it? Are you feeling proud of Dad and your aunt and everything?" And she looked at me and she goes, "Well, for a company that has 2 women at the top, it's a shame that all your posters have men only." And I was like, whoa. And I just stood there and I took a look around. And they say from the mouth of babes is always the truth. And she went off, and that those words completely stung me. And I realized, I said, what am I doing? And I realized that we may have an office which is balanced in gender population, and we may be very respectful towards both genders and creating a safe work environment. But what are we doing about this fantastic platform we have to tell stories? And the first thing I did is I had a chat with Nikhil and Madhu, and we pondered. And the most obvious thing would be that, okay, let's start greenlighting films which have female protagonists. And we said we have to go deeper than that. And the thing that we realized, it's not about necessarily just the story, changing the person on the poster. It's about the person telling the story. And we made an immediate commitment that the grammar of female directors is something that's so ill represented in our business. And as producers, we must change that. Immediately, we took a conscious effort to start signing women directors. And I'm proud to tell you that today, a lot of people, have publicized this, but we are doing it in stealth, perhaps in slower motion in that sense. But, Empire is helmed by Mitakshara. We have Sardar Ka Grandson that was done by Kashvi Nair. We've got Mrs. Chatterjee versus Norway, which is Ashma Chibba as the director. And we have Ananya Banerjee, who has directed a show for us, which will soon hit the platforms, and another one that's on another major platform. And the list goes on. We've got Madhumita, who we've signed up on a number of projects, and we're not stopping there. And we can tell that this is a battle because very often, I'd be lying if I tell you that studios don't turn around and say, oh, well, can we look at alternatives? I'm really pleased to tell you that Nikhil stands like a wall. Madhu and I stand right behind him, and we push back. And we say this is the narrative that we want to be out there.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Very interesting. And thank you for doing that. I mean, it's more the merrier, and more voices, more representation. Does it also translate to, I don't know, I'm just asking, do you actually have as many options when it comes to the technical crew? Not the creative crew, but the technical crew? I know there are a lot of editors, female editors, but I don't know. I mean, I'm just asking.
So art direction, for instance, in most of our projects is done by Priya Suhas. She's an amazing lady. I mean, just outstanding, the kind of work we've got out of her. Priya Seth had been a DOP on Airlift with us. We're always looking for more. And I hope, I'm all the time in discussions with young people, telling them that, listen, why don't you look at options? Don't be stymied by the traditional views on these things. But it's changing, and there are more and more coming out who will fit this bill. Art and design and styling are very, very much the obvious ones where you tend to get gender typified. But on editing, we had Charu, who edited Lucknow Central for us. She's been too busy to come on any other projects, which I'm happy for her. But so really, very honestly, when we look at female technicians, or when we look at technicians, I don't think gender plays a role as much as competency for us.
Absolutely. And that's how it should be, actually. It shouldn't be gender. But yes, if there is someone at the top looking out for more this thing, I think women by nature do not go and market themselves, right? So it's easier when they know that there is a certain setup which is kind of, comfortable taking more this thing. On that note, Monisha, tell me something. You've led 2 or 3 successful organizations. Between you and Madhu, you are also looking after marketing of your films, etc. But I think one thing which is something I was telling you on the phone also, was that you hardly market yourself, neither you nor Madhu. And I think Nikhil's, though Aram say, he's just like the quieter one anyways. Is this like a conscious call, or is it that, okay, this is who we are, so we're not going to make any effort? You are just seen when the film or the show is out, you'll be seen thoda bahut jo PR hota hai, usme, and then you just take a back seat, you're not there you're there on social media, but you're not just actively putting stuff. I've never seen your images or whatever of any of these social events and all of that. Why is so? Why are you not marketing yourself?
So I think, maybe it's partly the fact that I started my career really early, Anshu. So, I mean, philosophically, when I started my career very early, lesser known fact is I found my way on the cover of magazines at the age of 20, 21, and was very much celebrated at that point, and I enjoyed that attention. And then I outgrew it over time when my career took me more to the pink papers, where it was more about business statements and business comments and business coverage. And so when by the time we came into the entertainment business, Madhu and I recognized that both of us need to play the role of anchoring the business. And it's not necessarily about the spotlight. So we've never really gone about firstly seeking out spotlight. And when it comes our way, we're very graceful about it, and we accept it. But you're quite right. I think exemplifying ourselves now more and more so that we serve as inspiration to other emerging companies and emerging professionals, I think is a responsibility both of us have recognized. We're steered by the wonderful Niloufar Qureshi, who understands when she needs to push us and when she doesn't. But even just a few minutes ago, before I got onto this call, I had messages coming from marketing saying that, listen, we need you guys on some stuff. And normally I would be very reticent, but I understand the responsibility of it, and so we're trying to make time for it. Madhu, of course, and I should speak about her because she's done, besides being one of the best partners that anybody could ask for, Nikhil and I completely and utterly depend on her. I think her competencies are something that everybody in the industry now is beginning to recognize. She has a very active role that she plays within the Producers Guild. And I think that scope and scale is only going to increase. And it's not coming from, a diversity card that needs to be represented. I think it's her competence in finance and tax and process and policy that is being recognized. And I think those are the platforms where I expect we will willingly see ourselves on. The entertainment business, on the other hand, Anshu, has a lot of media coverage that is social, right? And I think it's more than by choice. I mean, we're blessed to have made some wonderful friendships in this business, but I think for a large part, all three of us have lives outside the business also, and we love going back to that. And we're very possessive to not let go of it. So, again, it comes back to that middle class upbringing. If you have to get up at 5 a.m, then you want to make sure that you're in bed by 10. And so really the social clock of this business sometimes doesn't match ours. And we make the exception now and then for very, very close friends. But for the large part, if you give me a choice of spending time at home or with my family and friends over a photo opportunity, you're going to see me definitely going to the former.
And that part of family and friends have got more or less not got anything to do with entertainment.
Well, there are a couple of people who are from the entertainment business. And I'm very, very possessive of those friendships. But some of those, like one of those has been in our lives way, way before we even got into this business. And we're very protective to really keep the sanctity of that outside the business. That's one of the advice that I would, if somebody was to ask me, what is the one thing, I work with my brother and I work with my best friend, and we are able to maintain our relationships distinctly despite having an extremely volatile work environment and working conditions. And I think it comes from how you use the levers in your life, and you learn to create those distinctions, and that helps really.
So what you're trying to say is that the life which is outside of work is something that you're not ready to, you shouldn't open up too much across.
If it's separate. I think the idea is to keep it separate. For example, I love to cook. I love to hang out with some of my friends. We watch plays. We watched, I mean, of course, before pandemic. I enjoy playing the guitar. So there are many hobbies in that sense. But these are such personal things that, and I read. I mean, I read a lot. But again, like I said, these are very personal experiences, and they are not necessarily something that the camera is going to enjoy, or the usual people who follow the film business or fan base will want to get seduced by.
Interesting. I've been told by some of the common friends that we have is that Monisha has answers for everything. Of course, I know about your food part because you keep talking about it a lot on your social media. What is that fascination, and how do you actually manage to get time? Because right now also I know you've just been constantly traveling for the last 1.5 months. How do you manage to keep that balance between your personal life? I know you live with your dad, right? Taking care of your family, people in the family in different parts of the world, and then follow some of your passion. How do you just, I would say, manage to stay grounded in spite of seeing so much of success, and just come back home as Monisha and not what
again
is that?
comes back to the middle class upbringing. Even as we progressed in life, my mother made us realize a couple of things. One, make your bed always, physically, literally. Two, never ask somebody to get you a glass of water. Get up and go and get it yourself. And three, learn to cook at least one meal a day. And I'm happy to tell you, my brothers do it as well as I. So it's weird because sometimes one of my dearest friends from the business, in fact, once, I can buy just one. I'll give you the example of John Abraham, who's so dear to me. He, I think, became a closer friend because when he came over to my house, he saw I was actually cooking a meal and serving it to him and his mom, and he said, wow. I know that struck a chord because he understood the ethos with which I function. As far as food is concerned, why it's important is because I think, again, we were brought up that, the best thing about religious functions is the fact that it brings people together to have good meals. So
it's a language of love.
Absolutely. So we were brought up doing that, and I've learned that no matter what happens, if people have good food on the plate, it's the best way to diffuse the most stressful situation. And then there's the other one, the tough business side of it, which I always tell, whenever I invite someone for a meal, I always tell them that, there's a saying that you fatten the turkey before you slaughter it. So I always tell them that be careful. Don't think this meal is necessarily a good thing. But yeah, I mean, that's, again, like I said, that's how grounded I am to when I get back home. And there's nothing glamorous about making your own bed, but I do it. There's nothing glamorous about doing your own laundry, but I do it. And it just keeps you independent in the truest sense of the word.
But Monisha, tell me something, you actually started in the industry after having successfully run a big company and made money to the extent that you were in that state of mind of retirement. So you were, the one part of ambition had been filled. Of course, life always keeps throwing things at you. But what about, and I'm asking this as a question, as an advice, there are a lot of young men and women who enter the industry, people like me who are maybe not actors, but be part of the business or the technical crew, right? We're always, of course, I've been there in the business for long, so I've got those answers, but for people who are listening, there's this thing of how do you balance? You have to socialize. The business requires, especially in the business of entertainment, it requires you to socialize so much because they say network is your whatever yevo. But at the same time, there's family, there's your personal growth, personal life. How does one, what do you have to say to those people who are in marketing, people who are in production, people who are writers, directors, who are not really faces, right? How do they balance? What is your advice to all of them, between networking and between whatever your work and all of that stuff?
So ultimately, Anshu, I think it's skill and competency that gets you work. Networking may make you more visible, but if you're good at your job, I think people find you. Whether you're a good actor, whether you're a good technician, whether you're a good director, whether you're a good marketer. And I think some of the most successful people in this business have the most quietest personalities. and they're less seen.
I agree.
And I really respect that because I really prefer it when people's work speaks for them than when they feel the need to talk about it themselves or put themselves out there so aggressively. It's just something that it's just basic common sense. So my advice would be to anybody who is new in the business, yes, do network, but don't forget that at the end of the day, that'll get you only this far. It's ultimately your skill, your competency that will see you through. And so I completely advocate the fact that focus on getting your competency right.
Interesting. Okay, just the last one or two part of the conversation, because I think we're almost on time. You've done all of this, achieved so much, and I know you continue to do so. What is your purpose now for someone who's achieved so much, has made the money? How does it look from here? What will give you happiness now in the next few years?
I'll tell you, I wanna be very clear about one thing, that money has never been, while it's been important, and when we were younger and we said, we need that for financial independence, it's never been about chasing wealth creation. It's been about financial independence. And sure. I think, all three of us were fortunate that we were able to create that. The last 10 years hasn't changed the house I live in. It hasn't changed the car I drive. It hasn't changed the way I travel or what I do. So whatever we've earned in this business, we've put it back into this business. And I think more and more companies and business leaders in the film industry or the content industry need to be conscious of doing that. This industry is over 100 years old, 110 years old. And it's recognized as a sector today in our economy, and yet the size of it is not even the size of a mid-cap company. A large reason for that is because people it is a gig economy at the end of the day, so people come in and come out, they plug in for a project and make the money and take it out of the business. And I get it, it should go to your lifestyle. I'm happy for those who can buy 10 cars and 4 houses and whatnot. It's a great privilege. But put it back into the business also. Create permanence, create longevity for technicians especially. And that's been a mainstay for us at MA, because we've constantly created retention with our workforce and built that. And I think the sense of accountability and responsibility we feel every single day for every single rupee that we earn, we know that it's divided in equal part to every person who's part of our team, and it goes to them. And so we feel very accountable to make sure that we come back to work every day and make sure that there's bacon on the table to pay for everybody's bills. And I think that's the culture that needs to be cultivated more. There are a lot of companies now beginning to do this, and I think that's what's going to see the currency of content in India and South Asia really growing, really getting a presence and a voice. I mean, I was reading a social media post the other day which talked about the fact that in the last 50 years in the Oscars, we've had only 3 nominations. And then to consider the fact that India is one of the largest producers of content, is it because our content isn't good enough? I don't believe so, because you've had 2 Western films score at the Oscars with Indian content, Slumdog Millionaire and Gandhi. So is this some kind of isolation, differentiation, discrimination? I just believe that we need to keep doing our jobs better as producers and put ourselves out there on a global platform. And the way we're going to be able to do that is by giving some kind of, like I said, a platform of opportunity constantly to our technicians. So that's something I feel very passionate about, Anshu. So I feel our job that way is unfinished. There's a lot to be done. On a personal level, I think my brother Kunal remarked when he fetched me, and I've been here for the last few days, and he said, you seem to be very calm and content. And I think a lot of that contentment is reflected in the fact that yes, of course. I mean, it's nice to see content that we've put out there getting appreciated. But I just feel reassured that we built a company where we can rely on the people who run it, and they're doing a great job of it. And I think that is the ultimate success and for any entrepreneur. On a personal level, I'm on a mission to become healthier. I want to
Most
enjoy.
important.
I want to enjoy my life. Somebody reminded me that I turned 50 last year, and I was reminded that you finished the larger part of your life, and you have a lesser part of your life ahead of you. And whatever that is, I want to keep doing what I do. I want to keep mentoring young people. That's something that I do, irrespective of the sector or industry that they're from. I enjoy understanding their challenges, and I learn a lot from them. Sometimes they don't even realize how much they're teaching me. So these are the smaller things that give me a lot of joy, and all of it pieces together to make me the person I am.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I mean, thank you so much. It's very liberating to hear what you say this, because I always compare it. So I'm a huge Korean drama content consumer, right? Not just Korean dramas, but what they've done with their music, what they've done with, creating the characters and celebrities, etc. And I think a large part of it is exactly why it's exactly because of corporatization, or how they've institutionalized the way the record labels are run, the way the talent is groomed for years, right? It's not like a 1-year phenomena. And I'm so glad to hear that part of the movement, or whatever that is starting to be recognized by Indian producers here, and hoping we'll be able to become as big, or probably bigger than what we're seeing examples around us. So thank you for saying that, for doing that, and thank you for all the little things that I think you as an individual kind of make a difference to the fact that I think I'm speaking to you after almost 4-5 years, but we've been in touch, but you remember every small thing. I think that's after everything, I think those small little things that make a difference.
Thank you so much, Anshu. Keep doing the good work that you are.
Thank you, Monisha. It was a wonderful chat, and I hope people who are listening to it will really, really enjoy this, because I know that it was a really beautiful conversation. Thank you for that.
Thanks so much, Anshu.
If you've enjoyed this conversation, please make sure you hit the like button, comment what was your favorite part, and also subscribe to the channel. We have lots of fantastic people coming up. This podcast is available on your podcast app by the name Questions I Wanted to Ask. You can also follow me on social media for more updates, short format content. Links will be in the description.